Hello everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining me. Whether you're coming here for the first time or returning again, it's always a pleasure. I'm Helene, and today I'm super happy to bring this hat tutorial that I designed. I've worked really hard on it the last few weeks, revising it, refining it, testing, retesting, and I came up in the process with truly a unisex hat for men, for women, and even some children's sizes and different sizing within each of those categories. So before we get into it, and I promise I'm going to try to keep my intro as short as possible, but because this is a constructed hat, even though this does not require any stabilizer, which is great because you can just roll it up, it's super packable, toss it in your bag. It is kind of yarn specific within certain ranges, and so I'm more about, not just like a one yarn fits all for everyone, and I'm all about the options, and I like to give those to you as well. And so I played around with different yarns and to come up with as much as I could, because you do need, like I said, a certain type in order to get the gauge and the shape and the fit too. And while I'm sitting here and have you right in front of me, I want to show you a couple of things so you can see how it fits on an actual real person. And I'm just going to do a quick little 360 here so you can see it all the way around. And there is an optional ponytail port in the back, so you can make it with or without. Well, not quite a 360, but anyway, I hope I did all right for you. I can see okay, but I don't quite have eyes in the back of my head just yet anyway. And now as far as the brim goes, after we make it, that does require a little bit of reshaping. I'm just kind of like a soft dry blocking, if you will, just to smooth out the work a little bit and get that shape for you. And then after you've done that, and say you've had it rolled up in your bag, when you put it on your head, then what I do is I take my thumbs and my fingers and I kind of curve my thumbs a little and put them under the brim to fit the shape of the brim. And then I take the tops of my fingers here and I just kind of squeeze and curve it just a little bit to get it back into the shape. Now, you don't want to stretch it too much to where it stretches out, but there are a couple of different ways that you can wear this. So you can, going across the front of the brim, you can just flatten that out a little bit and then just to the sides, like going up from the sides of your eyes and straight up to about that point, you see. And what that does is it creates more of an open, like a visor effect, or you can just go boop and push the sides in, and then you wind up with more of that baseball cap look. All right, well, it's a really fun one, so let's get to it, and I will meet you at the table. Okay, let's talk yarns for a few moments, shall we? For the guys and gals, the men and women's hats, I recommend going with a light number 4 in a yarn that is rather tightly spun, has some density, some bite and texture to it, in a natural fiber such as 100% cotton or a cotton blend. Linen blend would probably work great. And if you go with a yarn that has acrylic in it, such as this hat, then try to get one that has a higher percentage of cotton. Okay, and this is in Karen Cotton Cakes by Yarnspirations. It's 60/40 cotton acrylic. Again, you can see close up that's tightly, densely wound. When I roll it one way, it doesn't change the shape much. If I twist it in the opposite direction, the strands do not separate. That's what we're looking for. And the way that I've constructed it for each different size range is that the numbers, the stitch count and the placement is the same. We are just going to change up the hook sizes to make that a lot easier. So this is a really good one. Now the Yarnspirations, the Karen Cotton Cakes, is only exclusive to Michael's here in the US. So I have some other options. Well, another one that's in the US, Yarn Bee Hobby Lobby, their little LIL apostrophe dollop. It is the same type of yarn. And what's really neat about this is because you have shorter color changes, then you're going to see more of the transitioning of color within the hat rather than just maybe 3 colors in the cat portion. You're going to get just about all of them. So that's a really good one. And then Hirschner's, their willow yarns. Now they came out with recently their Cairo cotton, and again it is the same. And this color is called confectionery. It's 5.3 ounces. You get 311 yards. So you will easily be able to get 2 hats out of this. Again, in the US, Hobby Lobbies, I love this cotton, is a good option, and that's what I did for this hat here. That is where I did the Sweet and Simple Cosmos flower, and I will leave the link below for that, along with the timestamp to each section in the tutorial. So we're going to work this. We're going to start with the cap, then we will go on to the band as we create the ponytail port, and then we will move on to the brim. And this hat, which could easily be unisex for man or a woman, this is worked up in one of my favorites, the Lion Brand 24/7 cotton. This is 100% mercerized cotton. It has really good texture. The mercerization process adds strength, resiliency, and a little bit of sheen, and it's perfect for certain applications, including the hat. This is considered on the ball band a number 4, get 186 yards, but it's a very on the lighter end of the number 4 range, and it's got that great bite to it that we need. This is in the color camel, in case you're curious. This is lemon, and then the center is goldenrod. Well, guess what, everyone? I have another tutorial for you. Link will be below, showing you how to do this trim across the center of the band and a double top stitching. I already had this hat, didn't show it to you in this tutorial because I figured I had plenty of others, and so I did it separately. But while I was working on it, I really wasn't happy with the original top stitching that I did. I used a thinner yarn and a smaller hook, and it was just a little too thin and wasn't in balance and scale with the trim that I already wanted to do. So I came up with a solution for that, and it turned into even another look, which I really, really like. All right, so hope you'll check that out as well, but I just wanted to show this to you here so that you know it is there. All right, here, there, everywhere. The ones I showed you, you can do a lady's small, average, and large, a men's small, average size, and a men's large, extra large size. So going into the youth or a teen that has a really small head, or even a women's extra small size, something like the new Lion Brand ice cream yarn in the cotton blend. Now typically I would say no, this would not work for the hat because it is more loosely spun, and then when I twist it in the opposite direction, the threads do tend to separate, and it worked up really well for the children's sizes in this. We're using a much smaller hook, and therefore that creates the shape that we want. And so what I tried, instead of, and you can put the 2 strands together for the brim, but I happen to have another Hirschner's Willow, their Willow Cub yarn. They come in 50-gram balls, and it's considered a number 4 weight, but it's a much thicker, I would call it like a light chunky weight, and one strand of this worked really well for the child size. And then I'll get into the sizing a little bit later. Okay, and that's 60/40 cotton acrylic. And I will show you real quick here. I have all my little babies right in front of me. And now in the children's sizes, we also have a small, which will fit a toddler up to about a 10-year-old. And then we have a mid-size, and then a little bit larger size, which could be for a teen or a lady's extra small. And this is the color Blueberry with the, what is this one called? Clear Spring, which is like a turquoise color for the brim, and that worked up really well. And this is in the color Rainbow in the Lion Brand Ice Cream Cotton Blend. And I used the color Afternoon for the brim, and then I just took the little bit of leftover of the rainbow and then piped it around the edge and popped it with that sweet little flower. I mean, what little girl wouldn't just love this? And the color, yeah, this kind of a yellow with a goldeny apricot hue to it. Afternoon is the name of it. That worked out real well. Now Michael's has a line, and their yarn, it's called Capri, and it is very similar to this. However, I worked up a swatch and it works up just a little bit thinner than this yarn, but if you have a Michael's nearby, it's very reasonable. It's inexpensive. You can pick one up, give it a try if you like. Sometimes that's all you have to do is just try it. Okay. Supplies, you will need 2 stitch markers, 3 hooks. That's it, my friends, 3. We're going to start with 1 for the cap, switch to a different size for the band, and then go into the first row of the brim, and then go back down to the cap size for the rest of the brim, and then the finishing round with this edging, we will go up 2 hook sizes. And that is going to be the same across the board for all the hats. And I think what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and leave in the description box the different sizing options, and I hope that's going to make sense for everyone. So if you're going to be working a lady's average head size, and I'm going to work in the Karen Cotton Cakes, one of the new colors this year. It is called Fruit Tropics. Love it. Could eat that. Wonderful. All right, so I am going to work the lady's average size in a 4mm hook. Okay, 4mm USG hook for the cap portion. Now, if you know you have a smaller head size, then you can just go ahead and work with a 3.75 F hook for that. So you just know when we go down 1, then you go down from whatever the size you're working. When we go up 2, you go up to the size that we're working from, what we're working. All right, and yeah, I'd suggest to start this with an average lady's head size, so then that gives you an idea where you're going with that. Okay, grab your G 4mm hook. We're going to start with a magic circle. So I have the tail end on my palm facing me with the end of it downward. Wrap the working end behind. I take that working end, wrap it around my 2 fingers, cross over, take my hook, insert it through the loop I just created, and pull up that working end behind. Now I have a loop on my hook, and I hold all the pieces together, the loop on the hook, my tail end, and the ring. Now I'm going to pull that tight, chain 1 to lock that in. All right, and now you can pull in the ring a little bit, and that chain 1 does not count as anything, does not count as a stitch. Now we're going to work 8 single crochet into the ring. Pull the ring closed, but don't cinch it down too tight, just till the ends join a little bit. Okay, don't want to shrink that first stitch in. Slip stitch to join. Now what we're going to do is create V-stitches all the way around, so you can start each V-stitch in the round one of two ways. You can chain 4, which counts, your 3 chains count as your first double crochet plus the chain 1. And I prefer, if you would, do it with the chainless double crochet for a much nicer seamless look, because if you do with your chains, they're not a full stitch and you can see it much more visibly right here going up. Whereas if you are working the chainless method, you see you get a much cleaner blended look to it. Alright, so you can do the chain 4 just at the beginning if you want, but I'm going to show you one time how to do this. If you need to rewind it, you can. Draw up a loop about to the height of a double crochet. Hold that loop on your hook with your thumb, turn your hook upside down and go wrap around backwards, that loop on the hook, then go back into that same first stitch, pull up a loop. Now you yarn over, go through that first loop and then around behind the loop on your hook, and now you can let go, it's secure. You have 2 loops on your hook, and just like in a regular double crochet, you yarn over and pull through 2. That's your first double crochet. Now you chain 1 and double crochet into that same first stitch, that same first single crochet. All right, that's your first V-stitch. Now we're going to do 1 V-stitch and the remaining 7 single crochets around. All right, going through both loops, do a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. That's it, and each stitch around. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Okay, and at the end of this second round, excuse me for not counting, let me get my stitch counter out. And actually, you know, that's another thing that I didn't mention, which would be very helpful, is if you have a row counter or you know, get something to write down with to keep track. That'll be really helpful, especially for the brim. That's where you'll really need it. Okay, so the first 8 single crochet, that is round 1. Now this first round of V-stitches, we're on round 2. When you get to the end of round 2, you will have 8 V-stitches all the way around, which equals 16 double crochet and 8 chain 1 spaces. Okay, and I will see you at the beginning. Okay, I'm back around, and I always count after each round to be sure I have the right number. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can go ahead and pull your circle. You don't have to pull it all the way. You can leave a little air hole in there. It doesn't matter. That's up to you. And we're going to do a V-stitch increase in each V-stitch all the way around. Just in the chain 1 space, not in between the 2 double crochet. So you have your V-stitch, and you will have 2 double crochets right next to each other, And in the V-stitch, you will always have your chain 1 space. Now what we're going to do is slip stitch, not into the top of the double crochet, but right into that first chain 1 space. And again, you can count up your 4 chains or do the chainless method. And if you practice that, you'll get your rhythm and it'll just become second nature. And I just love it. It gives a good clean look. All right, again, chain 1 for your chain 1 space and double crochet again right into that first V-stitch. All right, and then you're going to chain 1 again and double crochet 1 more time into that same V-stitch, and that is your V-stitch increase. So you have 1 V-stitch, 2. You'll have 3 double crochets and 2 chain 1 spaces in each V-stitch all the way around. Okay, I'll do a few more. All right, skip those 2 double crochets together and go into that next chain 1 space, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. That's it. Jump over to that next chain 1 space and work another double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And that is your repeat pattern for this round, round 3. And at the end of this round, you will have 16 V-stitches all the way around, which equal 24 double crochet and 16 chain 1 spaces. So if you can see that pattern going here, however many V-stitches you will have the same number of chain 1 spaces. Okay, I will see you back around. I'm back around to the end of round 3, and we are going to begin round 4. And I want to tell you real quick another yarn that I thought of that's very comparable to the Hobby Lobby I Love This Cotton. It's a yarn by Universal. They're Cotton Supreme, and it's available in the US and on Lovecraft, so you can get it in the UK, and I'll leave that information also below. Okay. So as always, we're going to begin by slip stitching into that first chain 1 space, and if you're doing the chainless double crochet method, that's how we're going to start every round in the cap, in your chain 1. And now on round 4, we're going to V-stitch increase in every other V-stitch. So we'll do an increase in the first, a regular V-stitch in the second. We'll do that all the way around. Okay, so I already did the chain 1, now we'll double crochet, we'll do our increase, chain 1, double crochet, and that's all into that same first V-stitch. So now we have 2 V-stitches, we did our increase, and in the next V-stitch we're going to do a regular, just double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Jump over to the next chain 1 space. Now these are 2 double crochets next to each other. Even though the stitches are starting to separate, don't accidentally mistake that as a chain 1 space. And it's easy to do, and I've made this hat so many times and I still do that. All right, so skip these 2 double crochets, jump over that chain 1 space and do a V-stitch increase with your double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Redo that. Like that little bump there. Okay, and then so there's our increase, and then in the next stitch, a regular V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and in the next, skip the 2 doubles, jump over to that chain 1 space and do an increase, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So there's the increase, And then now a regular V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And that is our repeat all the way around. You will have 24 V-stitches, 40 double crochets, and 24 chain 1 spaces. Okay, I will see you back at the end. And here we are back around at the end of round 4, beginning round 5, which is going to be our last increase round, and we're only going to place 2 increases. So we're going to begin as usual with a regular V-stitch, and we're going to place 1 V-stitch in the first 11 stitches, okay, and then in our 12th, which is halfway around, we're going to place an increase. Then you carry on with 1 regular V-stitch all the way around with 1 increase in the last. So you'll have an increase in your 12th stitch and 1 in the last stitch. Alright, so begin as usual, slip stitch into that first V-stitch, chain 1 space. Go with my alternate to double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the same space. There's my first V-stitch, and 1 in each 10 more V-stitches, counting the first will be 11, okay? So you continue to do that. And when you get to your 12th V-stitch, you will place your increase. Okay, so your double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all into that 12th stitch. Now you will do 1 regular V-stitch in each of the next 11 V-stitches, and when you come back around and you get to the end, then you will place your second increase in your last V-stitch. Okay, so I will meet you there. Here we are at the end of round 5. I've placed my second increase in the last V-stitch. At the end of this round, you should have 26 V-stitches, including those 2 increases we did. That consists of 50 double crochets and 26 chain 1 spaces. And you know, if you're working in a yarn such as I am with longer color changes, you can certainly control that if you want. You can do, a few rounds of each color, then cut the yarn and change it so you get the full palette within this hat, and then just save that yarn for another hat or another project. Of course, you're going to have a lot more ends to sew in, but that's up to you depending on the look you're going for, and I just may do that. Okay, so now beginning rounds 6 through 11, which are all the same, you're going to just put 1 V-stitch in each stitch all the way around, and make sure you get those 2 increases that we did. At the end of round 6, you will have still 26 V-stitches, but you will now have 52 double crochet and of course 26 chain 1 spaces. And you will maintain the same stitch count at the end of round 6 all the way through round 11. And that would be a good time when you begin round 6 to put a stitch marker in, so that way it's just easy to see from that point up that you've done round 6 through 11, your 6 rounds, which will complete the cap portion, and then we will move on to our band. All right, so as always, slip stitch in that first chain 1 space. I'm going to do my chainless double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into that same space, and a V-stitch in the next, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and in the next, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and that's it all the way around. So I'm going to put my stitch marker in that marks round 6. Go ahead and complete yours, and I will see you at the end of round 11, and you'll start to see your work curve and to create that cap shape. Now if it looks a little larger to you, and if you try that on your head, it should be, because when we do the band we're going to decrease, not decrease, but use a smaller hook to just bring that in just a little bit to create that cap shape, because this is not a beanie and it's not intended to fit snugly on your head, and just give you a little bit of extra height so you have that air circulation, and again gives you that cap shape. Okay, I'll see you at the end of round 11. This works up very quickly, by the way. Here we are already at the end of round 11. How you want this to sit as it is about this much, an inch right above either your ears or the top of your forehead. We're going to be adding 3 rounds for the band. It's going to make up for approximately that much. And you don't want this sliding down too far on your forehead, adding extra heat during the warmer months. So depending on who it's for, the size, shape of their head, how long it is, and especially for a man's hat, you might want to add 1 more round, a 12th round of just the regular V-stitches all the way around. Okay, so now with the ladies' average size, we're going to be using an USF 3.75 millimeter hook. So whatever you're making it in, this is when you go down a hook size. I just want to show you real quick that I did indeed get all the colors in. I wasn't really loving how those extra rounds with this tangerine color was coming out, so I pulled back and I did 3 rounds at the beginning because I counted all the rows up to this point, and the Karen Cotton Cakes has 5 colors in each sequence, and this way I was able to get an even amount of the entire palette in the cap portion. So I started with 3 rounds of the first and then 2 each of the next 4 colors. I happen to have a solid color called watermelon. I think it's going to work real well with these colors. I'm going to do the 3 rounds of the band with that, and you can continue on with whatever color you choose. So let's zoom in a little bit. You can either slip stitch with your color you're continuing with, and if you're changing colors you can slip stitch, do your chain 1, pull that loop up, and then begin fresh with your new color and join that into the chain 1 space. But I want to prevent all these extra lumps and bumps with too many knots, so I'm just going to slip stitch with my new color, leave enough of a tail, then I'm going to go to the back, take those 2 tail ends, just make a little knot, right over left, left over right. I'm not cinching that down real tight now, just in case I have to pull anything back. Okay, so we are going to now actually do 1 decrease. We're not going to work that first double crochet at all. We're going to start with the chain 1, single crochet into that first chain 1 space, and in each stitch all the way around. So single crochet in the double, the next double crochet, and through the chain 1 space into both loops of the next double crochet, the next double crochet, and the chain 1 space. That's all you're going to do all the way around. Don't cinch these down real tight, okay? You want to keep them even all the way around. Don't need to cinch in the work. Going down the 1 hook size is going to draw that in a little bit and act as a bit of a decreasing. So when you come all the way back around, I want you to count, and you should have 77 single crochets. Okay, see you back around. Back around at the end of round 1 of our band. You can remove that stitch marker that you put in on round 6 of the cap. We're going to use that here. Before you slip stitch, I want you to count back at the end you just worked 9 stitches, counting the first. It's much easier to see before you slip stitch and join, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Place a stitch marker in that 9th stitch, okay? Take your same hook. We're going to create our ponytail port here. And on the next round, you might as well, you can get your other stitch marker ready because that's where our placement for the brim is going to be. Okay, so now slip stitch to that beginning single crochet. Chain 1. Does not count as a stitch. All right, and we're going, and you can cinch that down a little bit. And now half double crochet into that same first stitch and into each stitch all the way around. So 1 half double in each single crochet all the way around up to, but not into, this stitch marker. Okay, so you will have 68 half double crochets into the stitch just before the marker. Okay, so work those and I will see you there. Back around up to the stitch marker in round 2 of our band. You can take that out, but keep it handy. You're going to need both stitch markers for the next round. And now chain 9. And make sure all of your chains are nice and neat. There are no big spaces in between. We are going to be working into the top loops of each, so you don't want it to be super tight or scrunching your stitches down. And then we're just going to skip these 9 single crochets across and then slip stitch into the top through both loops of your first single crochet. Now if you have to put your work down for any reason while you're in the middle of working this, make sure when you pick it up that your chain is not twisted in any way. Okay, and chain 1, cinch that down, does not count as a stitch, and then single crochet back into that first single crochet, and then you are going to single crochet across 17 more stitches, so a total of 18 including your first. Okay, and place a stitch marker in that 18th single crochet, and I always count, double check, this is very critical here. Then you are going to work across 33 more single crochets, then place another stitch marker in the last one you've made, so there will be 34 altogether from stitch marker to stitch marker, including the stitches they are in. So just 1 single crochet across to that point, and I will see you there. Okay, I have my 34 stitches, stitch marker to stitch marker. It's always good to double and even triple count if you need to. And now just single crochet in the remaining stitches up to the ponytail port. Okay, stop at the last single crochet for just a sec. And I apologize, I forgot to tell you that if you're not doing the ponytail port and you just want continuous stitches all the way across, then on the half double crochet round, you just simply half double crochet all the way across. That's the only difference. And now all we're going to do for the chain is single crochet in each all the way across, going through both of those top loops. Take your time, make sure you're not doubling up anywhere, and count as you go, okay? It's very important to go through the top loops and not around. That's going to add bulk and stretch this hole and just make the whole thing misshapen. Thankfully, it's only 9 stitches. It's not that big of a deal. Last 2. And I still count my work, double check, make sure they only have 9, or just count as I go along. And now slip stitch to the beginning single crochet, and then rather than chain 1 and create a knot and bulk there, I recommend just cutting your yarn, pulling that up, and then just quickly just weave that end in and just go back through that same stitch. Pull it on in, okay? Bring it to the back, you see, nice and smooth. And then just weave that end in, and then you can put a little knot somewhere if you like on the back here, just to give it a little extra security once you've woven that in a little bit. If you want to, someplace where you can hide it and oops, split my stitch, and just pull that, tuck that down in where you won't even see it or feel it. Okay. Now, don't worry about this, because after we do our brim, we're going to work 2 finishing rounds, and that's going to create another round at the bottom, and then 1 to finish everything off to make it nice and stable, add a little bit of thickness, and to keep it from stretching out. Now it's time to begin our brim. Yay! When you do that, we're going to do the first row only in the smaller hook we've been working with. So for the ladies average, it's still the US F 3.75 millimeter. Get your other hook ready, the one that you worked the cap in, the USG 4 millimeter hook. And then also grab your row counter and clear that back to 0, or something to write with, because the brim you will definitely need to keep track on that. Now typically we're going to work this in 2 strands of yarn. You can go with combining one solid, 2 ends together, or you can pair with 2 different colors. I happen to have in the Karen Cotton Cakes the Rich Mint and the Aqua Breeze, and since I went with all this color, I'm just going to go for it and carry it all the way through. I think it's going to be subtle, and it'll be a hint of a marled effect. Now in this cap that I was wearing, I put 2 strands together, just working directly from the cake. One I pulled from the center and one from the outer, and it created this nice marled effect too. Whatever you like to do with it. Now, when working if you're going to use something like I showed you, the willow cub, or even you could try that Loops and Threads Capri from Michaels. But as mentioned, it is thinner, so with this, the single strand on this, I recommend staying with the same hook size, the smaller hook size as you did the band, rather than going back up. Now you can try it either way, but for me and my tension, it created a little too much bulk with the willow cub yarn, but because the capri yarn is thinner, you might want to go ahead and try going back up to the hook size the same as you did for the cap, just to give that extra thickness and make up for the difference between the capri and the cub yarn. I hope that makes sense. Something else that I discovered that I really think could work, that if you order from Hirschner's and their willow yarns, on the Cairo yarn, same as the cotton cakes, they do not have it in the solids yet, but for now, I thought, well, I picked up also their Cumulus cotton, a new yarn for them. It's 100% cotton, and it's pretty lightweight, I think. And it's considered a number 5 on the ball band, but it's not real bulky as some number 5s can be. To me, it's between like a chunky and a bulky. And looking at it, it's probably equivalent as if I were going to put 2 of these strands together. So this might just work for the brim. I haven't tested it out, but just from working with all these different yarns, I think it would do just fine. Grabbing your 2 strands of yarn, leaving that stitch marker in till your work is nice and secured. Going to slip stitch into this first single crochet going through both loops. It's only for the first one and the last one. All the rest across, we're going to be working in the front loops only. Okay, so do a single crochet, 1 in each of the next 10. After I've done 2 or 3, I want to take that stitch marker out and now place it into your first single crochet. The reason I work 2 or 3 first, it's just easier than trying to fit it in there with just 1 stitch with a loop on your hook. And what you also can do now is go to the back and just secure that lightly with your square knot. Okay, now that's 3, so do 7 more. There's 10, and then 2 single crochet in the next, and I try to anchor that down each stitch really with my thumb as I work, and that's going to help keep the stitches down low and from getting stretched out. And when you're working with 2 strands, go a little more slowly. Be sure you're catching both all the way back and forth, otherwise you might risk dropping a loop. Okay, so that was 2. That's our first increase. Now we're going to work 1 in each of the next 10, again staying in the front loops only. And now 2 single crochet in the next. Now work 1 in each of the next 10. We'll bring you up to the last stitch marker, and now you can remove that stitch marker. Hang on to it. Okay, and in that last stitch where that stitch marker was, go through both loops and slip stitch. At the end of row 1, you should have 34 single crochets, and we're not counting the slip stitches as stitches at either end. So now grab your other hook, the same size that you worked the cap in. And this lady's average, it's back to the G 4mm. Turn the work from right to left so that your working yarn is behind as always. Keep the loop on your hook close to the base of your work, but don't cinch it in real tight or that's going to cause your work to curl and tug. But we don't want it raised up too high either, because these two loops are going to create a bit of a bump anyway as we go. And you don't want it too lumpy, but don't worry about the bumps that are going to be there, because when we do our first finishing round, it's going to smooth those out and clean them up without any added bulk. Okay, so on each row at each end, we're going to skip the slip stitch, which is always going to be the first stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch into the next, which is the first single crochet. That acts as a decrease. Then single crochet into each stitch across, but after your first couple of stitches, stop, put your stitch marker back on into that first single crochet. It doesn't have to go through all the stitches as long as it's there. Okay, and by doing so, it's going to help you keep track of your placement and also your stitch count. Okay, we are working in all the loops now. If you're working with 2 strands, it'll be 2 loops on each side, the front and the back loops, so make sure you go through all of them. Work 1 single crochet all the way across, up to but not into this last stitch marker, and when you get to this last single crochet, you should have 32 single crochets all the way across. Okay, I will see you at the other end. I made it across to row 2. Sorry, I forgot to do my row counter. I hope you're keeping track though. All right, so 32nd stitch, and now in the last, take your stitch marker out for a minute and then just slip stitch through both front and back loops on that last stitch. Okay, again, turn your work. Excuse me. So just to let you know, okay, now we are starting row 3. On every odd numbered row, that's where we're going to put 2 increases on every, which is the front side of our work. On the inside of our work, which will be the even number rows, that's where we're just going to be working across. But for both rows, front and back, we're going to be slip stitching at either end, skipping over those first slip stitches. Okay, so skipping that first into this next stitch, our first single crochet, you will slip stitch, and now you're going to single crochet into each of the next 9 stitches. That's 2. Pop my stitch marker back in. Okay, there's 9. Now 2 single crochets in the next. Okay, 1 single crochet in each of the next 10. Two single crochets in the next. One single crochet in each of the next 9. After my 9th single crochet, that brings me up to my last stitch marker, and then slip stitch into that last single crochet. So at the end of row 3, you should have 32 single crochets, not counting the slip stitches at each end. All right, so go ahead and turn your work. Now we are beginning row 4. As always, we're going to skip that first slip stitch into the next. Then you're going to place 1 single crochet in each, going all the way across. I worked 2, putting my stitch marker back in, and you can go ahead and do these when you get to the other end. In the last stitch, that's where your stitch marker is, you will place your slip stitch. So not counting the slip stitches, at the end of row 4, you should have 30 single crochets going all the way across. 30 single crochets. Okay, I will see you there. Here I am at the end of row 4 of our brim. Work that last stitch, the slip stitch. Okay, turn the work. Skip the first slip stitch in the next. And now, this is row 5. Okay, we are going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 8. There's 2. And then 2 single crochet in the next stitch. 1 single crochet in each of the next 10. Two single crochet in the next, and 1 single crochet in each of the next 8. Take that stitch marker out and slip stitch. At the end of row 5, you should still have 30 single crochets. Turn the work. We begin row 6. As always, skip the slip stitch in the next, single crochet in each stitch all the way across. I work 2, put my stitch marker back in, and then when you get to the end, you can go ahead and slip stitch in the last where your stitch marker is. At the end of row 6, you should have 28 single crochets. I'm at the end of row 6. Just finished my last single crochet. Now I'm going to slip stitch in the last. Turn the work. Beginning row 7. Skip the slip in the next. Make sure to catch all your loops. Okay, now we are going to single crochet in each of the next 7. You can probably guess what's coming next. That's right, 2 single crochets in the next, and 1 in each of the next 10. That was 10. 2 single crochet in the next, and 1 single crochet in each of the next 7. Okay. slip stitch in the last. Row 7, you should still have 28 single crochets. Turn your work, beginning row 8, skip the slip, slip in the next, single crochet all the way across, okay, all the way across, that's this row, slip stitch in the last where your stitch marker is. At the end of row 8, you will have 26 single crochets, okay? Meet you at the end. Alrighty, folks, here we are on the home stretch. Alright, turn the work. Now we are entering row 9, our last row for the brim, and then we will have 2 finishing rounds. As always, skip that first slip stitch into the next. Now we're going to single crochet in the next 6 stitches. There's my 2, pop that back in. 3, 4, 5, 6. That's right, we're going to place 2 single crochet into the next, single crochet in each of the next 10, and 10, 2 single crochet in the next, and then 1 single crochet in each of the next 6. And finally to the last stitch marker, and we will slip stitch into that stitch. Then go ahead and pop that stitch marker back in just so we know where our beginning end is. Alright, so now with the same yarn and the same hook size, we are going to place a single crochet in each stitch that corresponds with each row all the way down, except for you'll most likely have to put at least 1, maybe sometimes 2 extra stitches to help make that curve, which is the equivalent of putting in extra stitches when you're doing a corner to make that shape going around it. So what we're going to do now, we are working through double thickness, so you have to be sure, try to at least get through both loops on each side, and then a couple of areas where you have these spaces kind of pre-made, we're going to work into those as well. So keep track of your stitches because you don't want to put too many extras. That will create bulk and it's going to cause the brim to buckle in places and be too heavy, and then it's not going to hold that shape. Alright, so here's 1. And we're placing that right next door, and you see those bumps I was telling you? We're going to kind of use those as markers in a way, and we'll be putting 1 single crochet on each side plus 1 in the middle. Okay, there's 1. And you skip over the bumps, and then you kind of have to fit it right in there somewhere. There's 2, and that's one's easy. 3, okay, 4, skipping over that, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, I'm going to pull that out and go under. I split the stitch there. And I'm going to recount 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, 10, that's our little extra there. And now I'm going to put an 11th stitch in on the other side, a little bump, the 2 loops. And then what we're going to do on both sides, and you can mark that if it helps you, you can mark that now. It's pretty easy to see. Right below our very first slip stitch, you're going where the slip stitch is, that first one we did, which runs right along the bottom of that first row where we worked into the front loop. We're going to skip over that and then single crochet in the very next single crochet, bring that in a little bit, and then in each stitch all the way around. Okay, every single crochet all the way around. And then when you get to the ponytail port, you're just going to work into the top of those single crochets and treat those just like the regular stitch that they are, and carry on. And I'm going to meet you down here because I'm just going to show you where that little join is to not mistake that and accidentally go into the slip stitch. Okay, so I'm going to continue working, and I'll meet you at the end of this section here. Here I am at the end of the ponytail port. Put the single crochet into the last single crochet of these 9, and then right next to it is where our slip stitch and join is. So don't accidentally go into there. Over here you will see that is the first full single crochet that belongs to the very next stitch below. Okay, that's where you want to go into, and then bring those together, and then you won't see any gap there. And for that reason is why I didn't want to do a usual fastening off, you know, where you chain one and you cut the yarn and then you have the knot there, because it's more visible and just adds a little extra bulk, and then you wind up having a bit of a gap. Okay, and then go ahead and continue working the single crochet all the way up this side, and then stop in the stitch right before that first slip stitch we did. Stop here, and then I will work the other side with you. Okay, see you there. Okay, I've come around, and now we're going to skip over that stitch, which runs right up next to that same row as on the other side where we first slip stitch. So we're skipping over that, and now we're going to single crochet, okay, right into the very next stitch. Cinch that down, bring those together. All right, and then there's the little hump, so we're going to go in between those two. It's, you know, it's always a little different, the stitches on one side as it is the other. Okay, now skip over the next hump. Okay, fit it in there as best as you can. So that's 3. There's 4 right into that kind of space. Now again to the right of the next little bump. Is that 6? 2, 3, 4, 5. Excuse me. There's 6. And there's in that other space 7, 8. And now to the left of the little bump. There's 9, 10, and then one more. There's 11. So however many you do, stitches you do on the first side, remember them or write them down just to make sure you do the same number on the other side. And now this was the first single crochet, and here was the slip stitch before that, And that is what we're going to slip stitch into, right over the bump. Slip stitch into the first slip stitch. Okay, you can see on the back that all those bumps are covered. Okay. You just have the thickness here from working with the 2 strands, but as when I told you at the beginning, we're going to do just like a little hand blocking, if you will, by just pressing the yarn, and I'll show you that at the end, but that will flatten that out a little bit. Okay, so now here's where you decide whether you want to do the final round in the same color yarn you're working with here, which I'm going to do, or if you want to change it up and go back to one of the colors that are in the main portion, the cap or the band, or pick another color that is contrasting or complementing. So, but whatever you do at the bottom, on this last round, you're going to be working with 1 strand only. And so that you don't have to cut both strands of yarn and start all over, you just find 1 strand, and now I'm working with the green and the blue here, so I think I want to just pipe that with the blue. What I'm going to do is just pull up the green. Actually, I don't want to lose the blue either. I'm going to pull up the blue, get that out of the way, grab a hold of my green loop, and then the green strand, pull that down, yarn over, cut the yarn just like you fasten off normally. Got enough to weave that in. Okay, get that one out of the way. You can pull that through. We'll sew that in at the end, and now you just have 1 strand left, okay, and that's the one I'm going to be working with. And because I'm working with 1 strand, I know it's the blue one, I'm going to take this stitch marker out. Now we're going to switch hooks again. You're going to go up a couple of hook sizes. I'm going up to an I of 5.5 millimeter. I've done it in an H, that works also, but I think the I is going to be better for this hat. I think if you're working with the thinner yarn, such as this one, then you can use the H of 5 millimeter, and that's what I did here. So it's usually, is a gauge at least a couple sizes up from what you're working with. You can test it if the piping is too thin or it's pulling in your work too much, then you know just to go up a hook size. So now we're going to begin, and make sure you go through all the strands, the 2 on each side, and all we're going to do, go through both, we're just going to slip stitch all the way around very lightly. And don't pull the work in. You don't want the stitches too loose. You want them even and not pulling the work. So take your time with this, and if you have to pull back a couple, particularly when you make a curve, going around a curve or a corner, and I've had to do that several times myself. And what this does is does a couple of things. It gives a nice finishing, kind of a braided look almost, if you will, in edging, as well as it reinforces the base, and particularly in the back here, and it helps the whole hat keep its shape and from stretching out, and it also rounds out this brim and smooths it out even just a little bit more. Okay, so this is all you're going to do all the way around. Just slip stitch. Okay, keep an eye out for your stitches. So you don't want them too open. They'll be kind of hanging, and it'll be pretty visible if one is that much larger than the other. Okay, and then so just keep doing that, and I'll meet you back around and then show you how I like to connect so you get, again, a very seamless look. and just to do a couple more. I mean, and you'll see this as your work develops too. You see when it's spread out here, there's a bit of a dip, and it's a little bit squared, and then where we have the increases, you have the bit of height difference, and then this evens everything out. And I want to apologize if you saw my like icky looking burn, that spot on my arm. Yeah, that was a burn from last week actually, from the oven, and I'm real sensitive to adhesive, and I didn't really want to cover it up, and I just want air to continue to get to it. And I didn't think it was really in view until after I looked at some of those clips. So yeah, I hope that didn't gross you out. But I covered it up now. Anyway, see, now let me just show that to you. See what a difference that makes already? It's even, it's more rounded, and as we do that little bit of shaping, we'll be able to just stretch one way, compress another way, and then just that little bit of manipulating with my hands, you can see already how that has smoothed out quite a bit. Okay, well, I'm going to meet you back around. We'll see you there, right back over to this edge just before we started with the single color. Okay. Okay, so now I've come back around, and I think what I am going to do, I forgot about that for a sec, with that one knot when we dropped the first strand, is I'm going to bring that yarn up, take the knot out, bring it up. Tell you, I'm just a case, probably saw that too. I have a bruise on my fingernail, it got smashed, I got a burn on this. I had a splinter here that had to be taken out. Gee whiz. Oh well, at least it's things that'll heal and get better. Okay, so for this green one that I cut off at the beginning, I'm just going to go back under, see the stitch just to the left, and bring that yarn underneath and through to the back. And then now I can take it down under the stitches and back, all right, and then weave it in and put a little knot somewhere just like I did earlier. And now I can pick my blue back up again. This is my last stitch because I have the blue and the green. Going to fit this hook in there. You can go down a hook size if you have one, if it's a little tight. Anyway, then that's my final slip stitch. And now I'm going to cut this yarn and then do just like I did with the other. I'm going to pull that up. You can take a yarn needle or a smaller hook. I'm just going to go over to the stitch next to it and go underneath those stitches and bring them through like that. But I just want to show you real quick is like I showed it to you when it was on my head. Again, I take a look at it in the front going across. I will secure it with my hand and just pull on those just a little bit and hold them a few seconds. Kind of like when you think of it like a rubber band, if you pull it and release right away, boing, it goes back to shape. But if you hold it for a little bit, then it stretches that shape out. And that's what we want to do here, not stretch out the shape, but just stretch the stitches just a little bit. I don't recommend steam blocking it because then that's going to open up the stitches too much, and we want to keep that tension to keep the shape. And then I just continue to do that as I go around the corners, just to round that out a little bit. if that's the shape that you want. And then any place where there might be a little thickness or a bump, I'll just press that, squish it down with my fingers. And then here where we have the increases, if you have a little bit of a gap, you're not liking the way that looks, a little too much, you can just, I just take my bit of my fingernail, if you have one, and I take the stitches and I pull them down towards the base of that row and just hold it for a couple of seconds. And then I will do that with the stitches above and above, just to make not real hard. You don't want to pull too hard on them. We want to keep them nice and tight, the stitches, okay? And you see just that little bit brings it down. That's all it takes. And then, you know, I will go row to row to row just to make sure it's even and there are not any gaps. And then I might do that again on this side here. You know, you just do a little bit at a time. You can always go back and redo a little bit more. See, that's all that took, from row to row to row, and now it's all nice and even. Because whenever you're putting two stitches together, it's widening that space a little bit. And then I go back around the other side, and on the side edges I just kind of smush those stitches where you have the two strands together. You can even just press them on the table like that if you want to. Just use your weight as leverage and just press forward. See, I'm just pressing down like that, just a little bit. That's all it takes, just a few minutes of working that. And then you can go in, sew in your ends, and that's all there is to it. And then you just try that on and work it a little bit more on your head if you feel like you need to. But then when you go around, like I showed you, you can take your thumb and your fingers and just pinch and squish. Or you can do it here as you go around if you're, giving this to someone, just to get that shape. And if you need to go around to the back because you do have that extra thickness, then just make sure that if you flatten it a little bit, go in the direction how the hat is going to lay, so you're not pushing it in the opposite direction. The idea is to keep it from curling, and then when it's on the head, it's going to flatten out a bit. That's it for this tutorial. I know it's a long one, but there are a lot of parts to it, and actually when you work it up, and once you've done it a couple of times, get the hang of it, this works up really quickly. You can make this hat in under a few hours, I'm thinking. Well, here you go. What do you think of that? I'm so pleased with it, with or without the flower, depending on the wearer. And this is that same Sweet and Simple Cosmos flower in my tutorial. It has a hint of sparkle in it. I have a list of the yarns that I used in that video. It's nice and rounded, smoothed out, has great shape to it. And so now when you're folding this, when you're storing it, what I recommend is folding the bottom portion of the cap inward and then just folding it in half. Don't put a lot of weight on top of it because that's going to give you a crease. So if you just put your hats on top of something else, then when you bring them back out seasonally, that will help already retain the shape, and then you just reform it a little bit like I showed you at the beginning of the video. And if you have multiple hats, then I recommend storing them with the brim in the opposite direction, because this is where the majority of the weight is, and the thickness is in the back, so that way you have a thinner area with weight and a thinner, lighter area on top, and then vice versa at the other end. Kind of like when you're folding and storing t-shirts. You have the shoulder at one end, the tail at the bottom at the other, and then you stack the other one the opposite direction, so it gives you a nice uniform even stack without too much heaviness and bulk just at one end. That's how I store mine anyway. So you do yours how you like, but that is my suggestion. Okay, well, please let me know if you make this. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll make the hat and love it. And you know, once you get the hang of it, you do it 1 or 2 times, you can work this up very quickly in under a few hours. And it's just really fun, makes great gifts. It's very well received with all the recipients that have gotten it, the people that have purchased this from me before and that I've gifted it to. Okay, so if you would, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you'll know of future uploads, although I don't know about you, but I don't always get mine, so it's a good idea to check back. It's always more good stuff, fun stuff to come. All right, well, take care, everyone. Thanks again for being here. Please let me know if you make this, what size, what type, what yarn, and I hope you will love it as much as I do. All right. Stay well, and until next time, I will see you soon. Okay, bye for now.